Child, let me tell you something that still sends chills down my spine, because it all began with nothing more than a whisper. My little Lily leaned close to me one morning, her tiny voice trembling, and said words that would shatter our lives forever. Grandma, there's a little girl locked in the basement. Ah, child. Let me take you back to that morning, because it is burned into my memory like it happened just yesterday. I was in the kitchen, the smell of scrambled eggs and toast filling the air, trying my best to make everything feel warm and safe for my little Lily. I wanted her to feel comfort, to know that Grandma's house was a place where nothing bad could reach her. She came out of the bedroom, her tiny arms still clutching that old teddy bear of hers, Barnaby. Her hair was messy, and her eyes were swollen and red, as if she had cried through the night. My heart ached just looking at her, but I forced myself to smile. I said, "Good morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep well?" She didn't answer. She just sat at the table, hugging that bear like it was the only friend she had left in the world. I tried to lighten the moment, flipping the eggs in the pan. I told her, "Grandma made you scrambled eggs and hot cocoa, your favorite." I placed the plate in front of her and gave her a kiss on the top of her head. I thought maybe, just maybe, it would cheer her up. But she only pushed the eggs around with her fork, staring down like something heavy was sitting on her little shoulders. Then, almost in a whisper, so soft I nearly missed it, she said, "Grandma, Mommy told me not to tell you what I saw at home." My hand froze midair. I turned slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. I crouched down beside her chair, trying not to frighten her. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "you can tell Grandma anything. You're safe here." Her eyes welled up with tears, and she shook her head at first, clutching Barnaby tighter. I could see the struggle inside her, like she was fighting herself, between keeping her mother's secret and unburdening her tiny heart. Finally, her lips trembled, and she whispered words that made my blood run cold. "There's a little girl locked in the basement at home. She cries all the time. And she says her hands hurt." The spatula slipped right out of my hand and clattered on the floor. I couldn't move. For a moment it felt as though the whole room spun around me. My sweet Lily, only 5 years old, was telling me something no child should ever have to carry. I wanted so badly to believe it wasn't true, that maybe she had a nightmare or that she misunderstood something. But then I looked into her eyes, oh, those eyes, wide, terrified, filled with the kind of fear that no child could fake. She wasn't making up a story. She was begging me to listen. She burst into tears, throwing herself into my arms, her little body shaking like a leaf caught in a storm. I held her close, whispering, "It's all right, my love. Grandma's here. You don't have to be afraid anymore." But inside I was the one trembling, because I knew deep down that this wasn't just a child's imagination. A little girl locked in Danielle's basement. I tried to calm Lily, rocking her gently the way I used to when she was a baby, but those words kept echoing in my head louder and louder until it felt like they were carved into my bones. Every detail she gave, the crying, the hurting hands, it all sounded too real, too heartbreaking. And in that moment I realized something dreadful. My daughter-in-law, Danielle, the young woman I once loved like my own, might be hiding a terrible secret right under her roof. That morning changed everything for me. From the second those words left Lily's lips, I knew I could never stay silent. My granddaughter's whisper was more than just a secret. It was a cry for help. And child, believe me when I tell you, that whisper became the beginning of the storm that turned my whole world upside down. Ah, child, if there is one part of this whole ordeal that nearly broke me, it wasn't just the secret Lily whispered or even the thought of another child trapped in that dark basement. No, what cut me deepest was when I reached out for help and no one, neither the police nor my very own neighbors, believed me. I remember the first time I marched myself down to the police station. My hands trembled as I clutched my old coat closed, my heart pounding with every step. I kept telling myself, "Clara, you have to be strong. This is for Lily. This is for that poor girl." When I finally stood in front of that desk, my voice shook as I explained everything. Lily's whisper, the drawings she'd made at school, and the strange things my neighbor, Mr. Sterling, had seen. The officer who listened to me, Commander Davis, sat there behind his scratched desk, tapping his fingers like he was waiting for me to finish so he could get back to his paperwork. When I finished pouring out my heart, he shook his head and said in that flat, tired voice, "Ma'am, I understand your concern, but children imagine things all the time. Without concrete proof, there's nothing we can do. Do you know what it feels like, child, to sit there trembling, your chest heavy with dread, and be told that the words of your granddaughter, your frightened little girl, aren't enough? I wanted to scream, to pound my fists on that desk, to shout. What if that child dies while you wait for proof? But all I could manage was a whisper, 'Please, sir, what if she's telling the truth?' He only sighed as if I were some foolish old woman chasing shadows. He promised to file a report, but told me I'd have to wait as if time wasn't running out for that poor child crying in the dark. I left that precinct feeling smaller than I'd ever felt in my life. My steps were heavy, like the whole world was pressing down on my shoulders. The sun was shining, but I felt cold, so very cold. And if the police's disbelief wasn't enough, the whispers in my own neighborhood soon became daggers. Danielle. Oh, that clever girl, she was faster than me. She started spreading stories before I even had the chance to defend myself. The next time I went to the market, I felt it. The silence that fell when I walked past, the way old Mrs. Hayes, who used to chat with me about her pies, suddenly kept her eyes on the ground. I heard the fish vendor mutter loud enough for me to catch. Poor old Mrs. Granderson, she's lost her mind, who accuses their own daughter-in-law of something so cruel. Everywhere I went, I felt the stares, not pity, not kindness, just suspicion, doubt, and whispers. The people who once shared their gardens with me, who once asked me to pray for their sick children, now looked at me as though I were some lunatic woman inventing horrors because I couldn't let go of my granddaughter. One evening, Danielle herself came to fetch Lily, and she put on quite the show. She stood in the yard crying, wailing that I was slandering her, that I was trying to ruin her life. She brought her brother Ethan along, a big man with a voice like thunder, and he pointed his finger at me in front of half the neighborhood, saying, "Ma'am, leave my family alone. Shame on you." And what did the neighbors do? They gathered, child. They gathered like it was some evening entertainment, whispering among themselves. I could hear them saying, "Poor Clara, she's gone mad. Missing her son too much, missing Lily too much, she's making up stories." I stood there frozen, the weight of all those eyes pressing on me. I wanted to shout, "I am not mad. My Lily told me the truth. There is a child suffering in that house." But my throat closed, the words caught like barbed wire, and when Danielle pulled Lily into the car, my sweet granddaughter looked back through the window, her eyes begging me silently, "Grandma, save me." Oh, child, that nearly broke me. That night I sat in my chair, staring at Alex's photograph, my son who I lost far too soon. I whispered to him, "What do I do, Alex? How do I fight when no one believes me?" The silence was so heavy it nearly crushed me. And yet, somewhere deep inside, I knew I couldn't stop. Even though the police dismissed me, even though my neighbors thought I was losing my mind, I couldn't let Lily's words go unheard. I couldn't let that little girl, Chloe, though I didn't know her name yet, remain a secret prisoner while I sat in silence. Yes, child, disbelief is a cruel thing. It makes you question your own sanity. It makes you wonder if maybe, just maybe, you're wrong. But every time I closed my eyes, I heard Lily's trembling voice, "There's a little girl in the basement." And I knew I had to keep fighting, even if I had to fight alone. That, my dear, was the hardest part, not the danger, not the fear, but the loneliness of being the only one willing to believe a child's whisper. Ah, child, this part of my story hurts almost as much as anything else, because it wasn't the strangers, it wasn't the police, and it wasn't even the neighbors who cut me the deepest. It was Danielle, my own daughter-in-law, the woman who once sat beside me in the kitchen, laughing as we cooked for Alex, calling me Mom, to watch her turn and twist the knife with her words. That pain, it lingers still. It began quietly, like all poisonous things do, a whisper here, a word there. At first I thought maybe I was imagining it, but soon the whispers followed me everywhere. I would step into the market and feel the air change. People who used to greet me with warmth suddenly busied themselves with their baskets. Conversations hushed as I walked by, only to pick up again once I'd passed, with laughter that didn't feel kind. And then I heard it plain as day one afternoon while picking out apples. Mrs. Hayes, the pie woman who once shared recipes with me, leaned toward another vendor and said, "Poor Clara. She misses her granddaughter so much she's gone delusional. She's inventing wild stories about Danielle. It's pitiful, really." Delusional, that was the word Danielle planted like a seed. And oh, how quickly it spread. I knew where it came from. Danielle was clever. She cried in front of people, painting herself as the victim, the devoted mother who just wanted to raise her daughter in peace while her crazy old mother-in-law tried to ruin her life. I could picture the way she must have said it, her hands trembling, her voice breaking just so everyone would pity her and look at me with suspicion. One evening, I heard it from Danielle herself. She came to pick Lily up, and instead of stepping inside like she usually did, she stood in the yard with her brother Ethan by her side. Loud enough for the whole street to hear, she wailed, "She's slandering me, Ethan. She says I kidnap children. She's trying to take Lily away from me." My heart nearly stopped at those words. She made me out to be a monster right there in front of the neighbors who crowded the sidewalk, hungry for gossip, and Ethan, big and red-faced, pointed at me like I was a criminal. "You ought to be ashamed," he thundered. "Accusing your own family. You need help, ma'am. Leave my sister alone." The neighbors nodded. Some even whispered their agreement. "Poor Clara, she's losing it." I heard one say, "It's her grief for Alex. It's made her lose her mind. Oh, child, you don't know what it feels like to stand there, your chest tight, your throat closed, while the very people you've lived beside for years look at you like you're deranged. To be called delusional, as if your love for your granddaughter, your desperation to protect her, was nothing more than madness." I went back inside that night and collapsed into my chair. My hands shook as I covered my face. I whispered to Alex's photograph on the wall, "Son, they think I've lost my mind. They don't believe me. They think I'm nothing but a bitter, lonely old woman." Danielle's rumors spread like wildfire. By the next week, when I walked to the market, people avoided my eyes, some even smirked behind their hands. I heard one vendor tell another she ought to see a doctor. Poor things imagining basements and children where there are none. And yet, Danielle's performance didn't stop there. She began to use Lily herself as a prop. She'd hold her close in front of others, whispering loud enough for me to hear, "Don't worry, sweetheart. Mommy will protect you from all this nonsense." As if I were the danger. As if I were the threat. Each word was like a nail hammered into my heart, because deep down I still remembered the Danielle who once smiled like a sunflower, who once called me Mom. To see her mouth shape lies so easily, to hear her weaponize my own grief, it was unbearable. But child, do you know what hurt the most? It wasn't the rumors themselves. It was that people believed them. My neighbors who had known me for decades, who had shared coffee with me, who had seen me raise my son with my own two hands, they chose to believe Danielle's crocodile tears over my trembling truth. Delusional. That word haunted me at night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, asking myself, "Clara, what if they're right? What if you are losing your mind? What if Lily dreamed it all and you're chasing shadows?" Danielle's poison nearly made me doubt my own sanity. But then every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lily's terrified little face, her lips trembling as she whispered, "There's a little girl in the basement." And I knew. I knew I wasn't crazy. Danielle's lies might have turned the neighborhood against me, but my granddaughter's truth was stronger than all her rumors. Still, child, I will never forget the weight of those days. To be mocked, dismissed, and labeled delusional when all I wanted was to save a child. It was like drowning with no one reaching out a hand. Danielle made sure of that. But what she didn't know was that her rumors, her lies, and her performance only fueled the fire inside me. Because I told myself, "Clara, one day the truth will come out, and when it does, every single person who called you delusional will know you were right all along." And oh, child, the day that basement door swung open, the day Chloe stumbled out into the light, that was the day Danielle's rumors crumbled into dust. Ah, child, I will never forget the evening when the truth, the proof I had prayed for, finally came to me. Not from the police, not from my neighbors who called me crazy, but from the kind old man who lived down the street, Mr. Sterling. It was a windy afternoon. I was out in the yard trimming the crepe myrtles, their red petals falling like drops of blood onto the ground. My heart was heavy that day, heavier than usual. The neighbors still whispered behind my back. Danielle still strutted around as though she were the victim, and I, poor old Clara, was left looking like a bitter fool. I remember stopping, resting on my shears, and whispering, "Lord, give me a sign, just something to hold on to," and then I heard hurried footsteps. When I looked up, there was Mr. Sterling at the fence. He leaned on his wooden cane, his face pale, and in his hand he carried a small package. His voice was low, urgent, and almost trembling. "Mrs. Granderson, you'd better come inside with me. I've got something you need to see." I followed him, my knees weak with both fear and hope. Inside his little house, he closed the curtains tight, as though the walls themselves might be listening. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old cell phone, his hands shaking as he held it out to me. I asked my nephew at the corner store to check the security cameras from last week. He explained, "Clara, what I found. Well, you should see it for yourself." He tapped the screen and the grainy footage began to play. Child, I swear my breath caught in my throat, because there she was, Danielle. My very own daughter-in-law, the woman I had once trusted with my son's heart, with my granddaughter's future. She was rushing down the street in the dead of night, dragging a small figure by the hand. At first, I thought it was Lily. My heart leapt into my throat, but then I saw clearly, no, it wasn't her. This child was smaller and thinner, with her hair shorter and tangled. She wore faded pajamas, the kind a child might wear to bed. Her little steps stumbled as though she didn't want to go, as though her feet were heavy with fear. Danielle yanked her arm, hurrying her along, looking over her shoulder like a thief in the night. The two of them disappeared into Danielle's house, the porch light flickering briefly before darkness swallowed them whole. I sat frozen, my hands clutching the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. My lips parted, but no words came out. Finally, I whispered, "Dear God," because in that single moment I knew Lily had not lied. My sweet grandbaby hadn't spun a tale. She hadn't dreamed it up. There was another little girl. Flesh and blood, and Danielle, my Danielle, was hiding her. I turned to Mr. Sterling, my eyes wet. "Are you sure? Are you sure that isn't Lily?" My voice was desperate, pleading, almost begging for him to tell me I was wrong. "But Mr. Sterling shook his head firmly. "No, Clara, I was awake that night. I saw it with my own eyes. That wasn't Lily. She was smaller, and the way she clung to Danielle's hand, it didn't look like a mother and child. It looked like a prisoner being led by her guard." His words cut me like a knife. They also lit a fire in my chest. For weeks I had been called crazy. For weeks I had carried Lily's whisper alone, clutching it like a burning coal in my heart. And now I had proof, cold, undeniable proof. I clutched that phone to my chest like it was the last lifeline I had. Tears spilled down my cheeks, but these tears were different. They weren't just grief or despair. They were mixed with something else, fury, yes, but also hope. I grabbed Mr. Sterling's hand and squeezed it tight. "You don't know what this means to me," I whispered, my voice trembling. "They'll have to listen now. The police, the neighbors, everyone, they'll have to believe me. Child, do you know what it feels like to finally have someone stand beside you?" After being ridiculed, dismissed, and laughed at suddenly, I wasn't alone anymore. Mr. Sterling had seen it too. His camera had caught it. Danielle's mask was slipping. That night, I sat in my chair with the phone in my lap, staring at the still image of that little girl being dragged into the house, her tiny frame, her hesitant steps. It haunted me. I whispered into the silence, "Who are you, little one? What is your name? Don't you worry, Grandma's going to fight for you too." When I finally went back to the police with that footage, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I laid that phone on Commander Davis's desk with trembling hands and said, Look at her. That's not my Lily. That's another child, and she's missing. Sir, please, you cannot ignore this." He watched, his brow furrowing at last. For the first time, I saw something shift in his eyes. He couldn't dismiss me anymore, not with that child's frightened silhouette staring back at him from the screen. Child, that was the moment the tide began to turn. Danielle's lies, her rumors, her crocodile tears, they all began to crumble because the truth has a way of clawing itself out of the dark no matter how deep you bury it. And it was Mr. Sterling's camera, that grainy little clip, that cracked open the door to justice. I often think of that night, how Danielle thought she was invisible, safe in the dark, sneaking that poor girl home, but she forgot one thing. Someone is always watching, and sometimes it takes just one pair of eyes, one shaky little video, to bring a whole mountain of lies crashing down. Ah, child. The day the police finally opened Danielle's basement door is a day etched into my soul. It was the day truth broke free from the shadows, but it was also the day my heart shattered in ways I never thought possible. It began before dawn. I woke to the sound of patrol cars pulling up in front of my little house. Their flashing lights painted my curtains red and blue, and for a moment I just sat there on the edge of my bed, clutching my robe, whispering, "Lord, give me strength." I had prayed for this day, begged for it, but now that it had come, I felt weak as a leaf in a storm. Commander Davis himself came to my porch. His face was grave, his voice steady. "Mrs. Granderson, we have a search warrant for Danielle's house." "It's time," I nodded, though my knees trembled so hard I had to grip the doorframe just to stay upright. I thought of Lily, of her tiny voice whispering, "There's a little girl in the basement." And I told myself, "Clara, today you will prove your Lily wasn't lying. Today the world will know." The drive to Danielle's house was silent, just the rumble of engines and the low crackle of police radios. I sat in the back of the patrol car, staring through the fogged-up window, my heart beating like a drum. Every bump in the road made me flinch. I kept my hands wrapped around the small bag I carry. Inside were Lily's drawings, the ones she made of a child behind bars. I held onto them like a talisman. When we arrived, the morning sky was gray, clouds hanging heavy, as if even heaven itself was holding its breath. Danielle's house stood there, quiet, with the red crepe myrtles in the yard swaying in the wind. Commander Davis knocked hard on the door. The sound echoed through the still street, and then the door swung open and there was Danielle. I'm Danielle, pale as a ghost, her eyes wide with shock that quickly hardened into fury. "What are you doing here?" She spat, her voice shrill. Commander Davis held up the paper calmly. "We have a warrant, ma'am. Please step aside." For a moment she didn't move. Her eyes darted from him to me, and oh, child, the way she looked at me. Like I had betrayed her, like I was the enemy. "You did this," she hissed, pointing her finger straight at me. "You want to destroy me, don't you? You want to take Lily from me?" I couldn't answer. My throat closed, and all I could do was clutch my coat tighter and whisper inside, "I only want to save the children, Danielle. That's all." Then Ethan, her brother, came barreling out of the hallway. His face was red, his neck bulging. "This is a disgrace," he roared. "You can't just barge in. This is our home." Two officers stepped forward, blocking him. He shouted and cursed, but they held their ground. And then I saw her, my Lily. She was curled up on the couch, hugging Barnaby, her eyes swollen from crying. When she looked at me, her little face lit with both hope and fear. I wanted to run to her, to scoop her into my arms, but Danielle's glare froze me in place. The officers began their search. Their boots thudded against the floor, and doors opened and slammed. The whole house seemed to hold its breath, and then they reached the end of the hallway. There, behind a rusty old iron door, was the basement. Danielle's composure cracked. She rushed forward, spreading her arms wide to block the way. "No, you can't go in there. It's just storage, old junk, nothing more." Her voice broke with desperation, but that desperation only confirmed what I already knew. One officer stepped forward with the master key. The lock groaned and Ethan lunged, screaming, "You won't open that door." But two men held him back as he thrashed like a cornered animal. Child, I could hardly breathe. My nails dug into my palms as I clutched my coat. The neighbors had gathered now, whispering at the fence, their eyes wide. I heard one murmur, "Could Clara have been right all along?" And then it happened. The lock clicked. The iron door creaked open with a scream that made my skin crawl. And from the darkness below came a sound so faint, so fragile, it tore my heart in two. A child's sob, trembling, pleading. I gasped, my knees buckling. I had to grab the porch post to keep from collapsing. Tears blurred my vision, but I could still see as the officers shone their flashlights into the blackness. From the shadows, a tiny figure stumbled forward, a little girl. Her hair was matted, her face streaked with dirt. Her pajamas were torn and clung to her thin frame. One arm was wrapped in a filthy rag, and her wide eyes darted in terror at the strangers around her. It was Chloe, the missing girl whose name I hadn't even known until the police matched the footage. My godchild, she was so small, so fragile. A female officer rushed forward, scooping her into her arms. "Call EMS now," she shouted, her voice thick with urgency. Chloe clung to that officer, trembling like a bird caught in a storm, clutching an old cushion to her chest as if it was the only safe thing she had left. I couldn't move. Tears streamed down my face as I whispered her name, Chloe. It came out broken like a prayer. Behind me, I heard the neighbors gasp, "It's true. Clara was telling the truth." Their voices were filled with shame now, not mockery, but I felt no triumph, none at all. Only pain. Pain for that child, pain for Lily, and pain for the family I once thought was whole. Danielle collapsed, screaming, "No, I didn't lock her up. I was protecting her. You don't understand." But her words rang hollow, shrill, and desperate. Ethan fought the officers, cursing and shouting that it was all a setup, that I had tricked everyone, but the truth was there in the arms of that trembling little girl. No rumor, no lie, no tears could erase it. Commander Davis's voice cut through the chaos. "The crime is in plain sight." His words were heavy as stone. Child, in that moment, the world turned upside down. The woman I once called daughter was dragged away in handcuffs, her eyes burning with hatred as they met mine. "You destroyed everything," she spat, but I didn't feel like a destroyer. I felt like a broken old woman who had clawed her way through disbelief and ridicule just to make sure one little girl could breathe free again. As Chloe was carried to the ambulance, I looked at Lily. She still clutched Barnaby, her eyes wide, but this time, when they met mine, I saw something their relief. And I whispered to myself, "Alex, my son, we did it. Your daughter's whisper saved a life, and child, that was the day the basement gave up its secrets, and the truth, no matter how painful, came into the light. Ah, child." If I thought the shock of seeing little Chloe stumble out of that basement was the end of my torment, I was wrong. The truth went deeper, darker than I could have ever imagined. Because when the police arrested Danielle that day, handcuffs clinking against her wrists, they uncovered a side of her I never knew existed. A side tied to shadows, to people so dangerous it chills me still to think of it. I remember standing in that yard, my heart still pounding from the moment Chloe was carried out. The neighbors were buzzing, whispering, their eyes darting between me and Danielle. Some looked at me with shame, others with pity, but all of them were shaken, and Danielle, oh child, the woman I once welcomed into my family, she was thrashing like a wild creature, her face twisted, her hair clinging to her damp cheeks. "You don't understand." She screamed as the officers pulled her toward the car. I was protecting her, I had no choice, but her words rang empty, bouncing off the stone of the truth. For all her dramatics, no one rushed to her side anymore. Not one neighbor dared to defend her. Ethan, her brother, tried. He roared like a bull, veins bulging in his neck, accusing the police of framing them and accusing me of plotting. "This is all that old woman's doing." He spat, pointing at me like a curse. But the officers shoved him back, their faces grim. They weren't listening to his nonsense. It was then, child, that one officer came up from the basement carrying a bundle of old notebooks, their covers worn, their pages yellowed. He handed them to Commander Davis, and I could see the man's expression harden as he flipped through them. Strange symbols, scribbled phrases, talk of rituals and cleansing and sacrifice. Things no decent soul should ever write. And there, scrawled in black ink on more than one page, was a name, Elias Thorne. The moment Commander Davis said it aloud, his tone sharp and low, a chill ran straight down my spine. That name, it sounded like poison. He looked at his officers, his jaw clenched. "This isn't just a kidnapping. This ties her to that extremist cult we've been tracking." My knees weakened at those words. I had thought Danielle was simply broken, that grief had twisted her after Alex's death, and that loneliness had made her cruel. But a cult, a dangerous group led by a man the newspapers had whispered about just the year before. My God, child, how had she fallen so far? I stood there frozen, clutching the porch post for balance. My mind reeled with memories. I saw Danielle in my kitchen years ago, smiling like sunlight, asking me if Alex would like the dish we were preparing. I remembered her laughter at family dinners and her bright eyes when Lily was just a baby. How could that woman, that young wife and mother, end up scribbling the name of a cult leader in secret notebooks and locking children in her basement? I whispered to myself, Danielle, why? But of course there was no answer. The police moved quickly then. They hauled Danielle to the car, ignoring her wails. Her brother Ethan fought, screaming that they were innocent and that the books were lies and planted evidence. But his words sounded hollow even to the neighbors who once believed every rumor he and his sister spread. Commander Davis ordered his team to secure the basement. More officers filed through, their faces pale as they uncovered more chains, rags, scraps of food. Evidence of a child kept there not for a night, not for a mistake, but for days, weeks maybe, the weight of it pressed on all of us standing there. The neighbors whispered, horrified, a cult, here in our own neighborhood. One woman clutched her chest, shaking her head in disbelief. Another muttered, and we thought Clara was crazy. I didn't look at them. I couldn't. My eyes were fixed on Danielle as they shoved her into the police car. She turned once, her eyes finding mine and child. There was no warmth in them, only hatred. Her voice was low and venomous. You destroyed everything. She hissed before the door slammed shut. I felt no triumph, only sorrow. Because though she had done monstrous things, though she had hurt children and nearly destroyed my Lily with her secrets, she was still the woman my son once loved, and now she was gone, lost to something I could never understand. Later that night, the news spread like wildfire. Reporters swarmed the street, their cameras flashing, their voices sharp with questions. They said Danielle had been charged not only with kidnapping, but also unlawful detention and conspiracy tied to that cult. The name Elias Thorne echoed on every channel, and suddenly my quiet little street became the center of a storm. But me, I sat in my chair, staring at Alex's photograph, tears sliding down my cheeks. Son, I whispered, I don't know how this happened. I don't know how she fell into such darkness, but I promise you, I'll protect Lily. I'll protect every child I can. Child, do you know what it feels like when the truth is finally out, but it brings no peace? That was me. Yes, Danielle was arrested. Yes, her cult connections were exposed, but my heart still carried the weight of it all, the betrayal, the shame, the grief for the family I thought I had. And yet, deep inside, I also felt a spark, because now the world couldn't dismiss me anymore. Now no one could call me delusional. Now the truth had claws, and it had torn its way into the light. But oh, child, the cost of that truth was my family, and that is a price I will carry with me for the rest of my days. Ah, child, if there was one light that shone through all that darkness, it was my sweet Lily. My brave little granddaughter, who carried a secret so heavy it nearly broke her, yet found the courage to whisper it to me. In the end, it was her tiny voice, quieter than a bird's song, that saved Chloe's life. And for that, the world came to call her a hero. I remember the first time I saw her after everything. The police had gone, Danielle was behind bars, and the street was still buzzing with reporters, but Lily was safe, curled up on my couch with Barnaby tucked under her chin. Her eyes were still swollen, her cheeks damp from tears, but when I stroked her hair, she whispered, Grandma, did I do the right thing? Oh, child, my heart nearly burst. I gathered her close, kissing her forehead again and again. Yes, sweetheart, I told her, my voice breaking, you did the bravest, most important thing anyone could do. You saved Chloe, you saved her, but it wasn't just me who saw her bravery. Word spread quickly. At first it was just the neighbors who came one by one, shame written all over their faces. Mrs. Hayes brought over a pie, her eyes wet as she said, I'm sorry, Clara, I should have believed you. You're Lily. She's remarkable. Others followed, murmuring apologies, praising the child they had once ignored. Then the newspapers picked up the story. I'll never forget opening the morning paper and seeing a headline, "Little Girl's Whisper Saves Missing Child." They didn't even use her name at first, just called her the brave granddaughter, but I knew and she knew that was her. Soon after, the police invited us to the station. Commander Davis himself bent down to Lily's level, his stern face softened. "Young lady," he said, "you were very brave to speak up. Because of you, Chloe is safe today." He handed her a little certificate with her name printed neatly across the top. Her eyes widened, and she clutched it like it was the most precious thing in the world. And Chloe, oh, sweet Chloe, when she was strong enough, her parents brought her to my house. The moment she saw Lily, she rushed into her arms, hugging her so tightly I thought they might both tumble over. "You saved me," Chloe whispered, her voice hoarse. "You told." From that day forward, those two were inseparable whenever they visited. They'd sit on the porch swing, their little legs kicking, giggling softly as if trying to chase away the shadows of what they had endured. And every time I saw them together, my heart whispered, "This is what bravery can do. It can turn whispers into laughter." But bravery, child, does not come without its scars. Lily had nightmares still. Some nights she would wake up screaming, clutching Barnaby, begging me not to let her go home. I would hold her tight, rocking her until her sobs softened, reminding her again and again, "You are safe now, you are strong, and you are my hero." The world may have praised her, but to me, her courage was something deeper. She was just a child, yet she carried the kind of strength most grown folk never find. When everyone else doubted me, when neighbors whispered that I was delusional, Lily stood steady in her truth. She spoke when it would have been easier to stay silent. She trusted me with a secret that could have cost her dearly. That, child, is what true heroism looks like. Not loud, not grand, but quiet and steady, born from love. In time, her story spread beyond our little town. Letters arrived, teachers telling their students about her, parents writing to say how her courage reminded them to listen to their own children. One letter I remember especially came from a mother in another state. She wrote, "Your Lily gave me the courage to believe my daughter when no one else did. Because of her, I took action and I saved my child." When I read that to Lily, her little face glowed. She didn't quite understand the full weight of it, but she smiled shyly and whispered, "Grandma, I just wanted to help." Ah, child, that's the heart of it. Heroes don't set out to be heroes. They just follow the truth even when it's hard. And that's what my Lily did. So yes, the papers called her a hero, the police praised her, and even the neighbors who once doubted her now admired her. But to me, she was more than a hero. She was proof that even the smallest voice, when spoken with courage, can change the course of everything. And I'll tell you this, child, until my last breath. Whenever the world feels too dark, I will remember my Lily's whisper and how it carried the power to save a life.